Hi guys, I'm SANIA BANSAL, currently pursuing BTech in Data Science and Artificial Intelligence at IIT Roorkee. All of you must have played the snake game in Nokia, and have you ever wondered how do we make it? Let's create it using C++ today. First of all, let's understand the game. What are the basic things that we have to keep in mind and create using C++? First of all, we will have to define the direction and movements of the snake. Then we will have to generate food at random coordinates. And we have to write the code for growing of the tail. And we have to show the game over on when the snake hits the boundary. Okay, so before we jump to the code, let's understand a few CPP concepts. So first of all, let's see of basic data types that we use in C++. So first one is int, that that is basically stands for integers. Next is float. The numbers with 6 to 7 decimal places are used in float, and the numbers with a larger number of decimal places like 15 to 16 decimal places are there. Then we will be using double. For a character like A, B, C, we will be using char, and for text to be printed like as it is, we can store it in a data type named string. Next one is bool. When, like, let's say we have some variable, we have some question that it can be true or false. So bool returns only two values, true or 0 and 1, that stands for false and true respectively. Next comes the concepts of loops and switch. So let's start with the for loop. The for loop is used to iterate a set of operations multiple times. Means we have a basic condition, and we have that we have to perform that operation for a particular number of times. Then we will be using the for loop. Next is the if else loop. It is used when we have a condition, means we are executing a set of conditions when a particular set of statement is true. Like if this is true, do this, else do this. Next comes the while loop, means while a particular condition is true, we have to set a particular code, we have to execute a particular code, and when the condition becomes false, the loop, we have to exit the loop. Next comes switch. Let me explain this with the help of an example. Let's say we take the example of a calculator. Means what is the output, that will depend on what the user inputs. Like if the user inputs plus, then we have to add the numbers. So we will define the cases, like for case plus, we have to add the numbers. So similarly, we define the case minus, case multiply, and case divide. So that is the use of switch, when we have to switch between multiple operations and perform different and execute different codes for different operations. Okay, so next there are some CPP concepts like that. First, we talked about the basic data types that were int, float, double, etc. Now, let's talk about some user-defined data types. Letter, struct, union, enumerations. Um, so all of these are user-defined data types. So what is the difference between them? When we talk about struct, so here each member gets its own memory, so you can fetch any of its member multiple at a time. But in union, all the members share the same memory, so you can only fetch one of its members at a time. In enumerations, you assign names to integers, and its basic function is to improve the readability of the code. Like, let's say in our code, what we are going to use further, we have assigned the numbers as the name of directions so that the readability of code is enhanced. Like if you're writing a code with a millions of lines, how are you going to remember that what was the meaning of one, what was the meaning of two? So to make the code readable and easier, we just assign names to numbers using enumerations. Next comes how do we define the subfunctions. So when we have to use a function multiple times, like you are going to calculate the sum of two numbers for many a times. So every time you have to define that function. Instead, you define it once before the main function and then you can call it as per the requirement. Okay. So next comes OOPS, that is object-oriented programming. It is a method of programming that organizes the code into objects. So basically, you can write a code without OOPS, but what is the use of defining classes? It just makes the code readable and organized. So basically, it is used to organize the code more efficiently rather than making it messy. What are classes and objects? Now, class can be understood as a blueprint for creating objects, and the object is a real world entity. Next, let me tell you about the access modifiers in a class. Now, you don't want everything to be public, that is, that everything should not be visible to the user. Like, if you're creating a website, so a user's password should be kept in private. It should not be visible to everyone. So you can keep that password in the category of private, and these private members can be accessed only within the class. They cannot be accessed outside the class anywhere in the code. Next, public. Public access modifiers are those that can be accessed anywhere, and like you have basic information like name and other basic details that can be specified in the public part. And the protected access modifier is basically that type where it can be accessed within the class and the linked classes. Okay, so now let's jump to the code finally. That were the few basic concepts that we need to know before starting to code. So first of all, we include the libraries and functions. First one is hash include IOStream. So IOStream is the basic library that is included in almost all of the functions. And what is hash used for? It is a pre-processing directive. And next comes hash include dec. So it is the refers to the double-ended queue. Okay, so let me explain this in detail. Like suppose you're going to see a movie and you have to stand in a line. That line you can only stand at the back. That is a queue. When we talk about a double-ended queue, this is a like queue. You can add members from this side and from this side also. That is a double-ended queue. So why do we need it here? So it is required to represent our snake. That the snake can be extended from both the sides. Next is C time. And next one is C standard library. What is its use? Here I have included it. So in order to use the random number generator. And why do I need that? Random number generator will be required to like place the food at random coordinates. Okay, so next is hash include conio. And it is, I have included this one so that I can use the kbit and get command. What is the use of kbit? This command basically checks that whether a key is pressed on the keyboard or not. And what is the use of gets? It basically fetches the data from the that which key is pressed. Next is hash include windows.h. So sleep basically you can compare it to the FPS that at what speed the game is working. And next is set console cursor position to set the position of the cursor. That command is included in the Windows library. So next is using namespace std. The that says that we will be using the standard namespace. If we don't mention this line, then we will have to mention and even in front of cout, we will have to mention that we are using the standard namespace. So instead of creating it messy by mentioning it again and again, we just write it in the starting that we are using the standard namespace. Next, we have defined the width and height of the boundary of the game. So that we have defined using the constant int. So why are we using constant int when we can simply use int over here? Basically, let me give you an example. Let's say you are writing a program and you have to use Boltzmann constant somewhere in the program, and you have defined it using the data type int, and later somewhere in the program you accidentally change it to some other value. So that will create a mess. If you want to avoid that, then we are already defining it with a constant data type so that you don't change it accidentally in the further code. That is what we are doing over here, that we are defining the width and height by the constant in data type so that we don't change it further. Next, we have defined the direction using the enumerations. So stop is taken as 0, left is 1, right is 2, up is 3, and down is 4. Next, we have defined the point data type, that is the refers to the coordinates of a point using struct. And what what is the point? We need to define int x and int y for them. Next are the console helpers. First of all, you will say what is this void. So whenever you are defining a sub function, you have to mention the return type of that functions. Let's say you are calculating the product of two numbers, of two integers, let's say. So the answer will be integer. So the return type would also be int. But there are functions where you don't return anything, the function does not return any value. In that case, the return type will be void. So I have defined the sub function, name set cursor visible, and what are the parameters? Bool visible. That is the cursor visible or not. Next, I've defined a handle h equal to get standard handle, standard output handle. What is its function? It is basically like a remote control of the screen. Like whenever you want to make any change to the screen, you will be using the handles. Next, console cursor info, we are modifying we are inserting the information related to the cursor. That is the size or say width of the cursor is set to be 100 and the cursor is said to be visible. Next, what was the purpose of this whole function? I would like to say that actually without this part of the function, code, the actual game was flickering. So I did not want the game to flicker and the cursor, so I set the cursor visibility to false. So the flickering stops. Next, the subfunction defined is set cursor position and the parameters are int x and int y, again the coordinates of the cursor. Again, we are defining the handle and the coordinates of the position are x and short y and set console cursor position to h comma position. Okay, so next we are defining the class snake game. And what are the private parts? We are defining all the variables as private. Like I have defined a double-ended queue with the data type point snake. Means snake is taken as a double-ended queue whose each element would be of the data type point. Next, point food, that are the coordinates of the food. Direction, dir, bool, game over. That game over can be only yes and no. So we have defined it using the bool data type and int score. Next, public. In public, I define the constructor. Now, what is a constructor? A constructor is basically a command that will be executed whenever you call that subfunction. So what is the what is the constructor doing over here? It will reset the game. Now, why did I define all the variables in private over here? Because I don't want to change these variables in the further code, so I will be defining them in the private part. wherever I will need to reset the game again and again. So that I have defined in the public part. Next, let's define the reset subfunction. Snake.clear. So to clear all the paths from the snake that from the previous game, and then snake.pushback width by 2 comma height by 2. So means initial snake is defined as three paths, and the positions are defined as follows. Means the we have def I am taking three parts of the snake in the initial position, and first is at the center of the screen, that is width by 2 comma height by 2, and second is at width by 2 minus 1 comma height by 2, and third part is at width by 2 minus 2 comma height by 2. That is, initially the snake is placed horizontally at the center of the screen, and in the initial condition the direction is stopped that the snake is at rest, score is 0, and the game over is false, and food is placed at some random position. That is the structure I want when I start a game. So that I have defined all that in the reset subfunction. So next subfunction that I need to define is place food at the random coordinates. Here I have used the while true loop. What does it do? So this loop will be executed infinitely many times until and unless we break it internally. Here I have defined the fx, fy that as the coordinates of the food. How have we defined them? We pick a random number using the random command. And what is this percentage symbol over here? It is called a modulo. Means if you write a modulo b, that will give you the remainder when a is divided by b. So what will this line give you? Random number modulo width minus 2. Let's take the example. Let's say you have width equal to 20. Then random modulo 20 minus 2. That is, why do we need minus 2 over here? We will see it further. Let's say random modulo 18. What will it give you? It will give you all the numbers from 0 to 17. If I add 1 to that, it will give you all the numbers from 1 to 18. Now, why do we need the numbers from 1 to 18 only? Because here zero-based indexing is used, and at 0 position there is the left boundary of the game, and at 19 there is the right boundary of the game. So the food can be placed on 8 positions from 1 to 18. So that is why we have fixed the fx and fy from 1 to 18. Next, bool on snake is false. Means if these coordinates do not match the coordinates of the snake, then it will be executed further. For auto and S in snake. Now, what does these symbols mean? Auto. Auto basically defines the data type of a variable based on the initial conditions. And what is this and used for? And is used to pass a variable by reference so that we don't duplicate or make any copy of a variable in the further steps. Rather, we are just passing it by reference that we used earlier in our code. So for every element S in the double-ended queue snake, here basically the data type of S is point, that we defined earlier. If S dot X is equal to Fx and S dot Y is equal to Fy. S dot X. Now for a double-ended queue, like for any subfunction defined by struct, we can call its members by using the dot operator. Like in the struct point, we have defined int x and int y. So s dot x will basically give you the x coordinate of the snake of any element s in the snake. And if the x coordinate and y coordinate of the food matches the any point on the snake, then on snake is true and we have to break it. And this code will be executed only when the On snake is false. If not on snake, then coordinates of the food will be fx and fy, and we will break this off function over here. That was all about placing the food. Now we will talk about the input sub function. If not k bit, matlab k bit was used to check if a key is pressed or not. If a key is not pressed, then we will return from here and the rest of the function will not be executed. But if a key is pressed, then get fetches that key, it fetches that data and store it to int variable named C. Now, if C is 0 or C is 2 to 4, what is this symbol refer to? This is the logical OR that if C is 0 or C is 4, then the rest of the code will be executed. Now, what does 0 and 2 to 4 refer to? Basically, every letter, every key has an ASCII value corresponding to it, and 0 and 2 to 4 are not ASCII values of any key. So, what are their functions? They just direct the system to the extended keys, that is the arrow keys over here. So, it basically arrow keys are being used, then int arrow is equal to yes means the arrow that is pressed that is stored in the variable arrow. And if arrow is 75, what is this 75? It is the ASCII value of the left arrow. And means if arrow is 75 and direction is not equal to right, then direction is left. Means why do we need to refer to this? That why do we need to write direction is not equal to right? Means if the snake is already moving towards right and you are pressing left, then the snake will collide into itself, but we don't want that condition. So in order to avoid it, we are already specifying that do this only if it is not, if only if we are not pressing the opposite key opposite to the direction of the motion of the snake. Similarly, I have defined all these for left, down, and up. Else means this part of the function was to use the arrow keys. Now this next part is to use the characters, that is A, S, D, and W. Now char ch, this is char ch, here we have stored the value. Now if A is pressed and direction is not equal to right, direction is left. Similarly, we have defined it for the characters as we had defined it earlier for the arrow keys. And extra what we have defined, if character is R. If R is pressed, then we have to reset the game. And if Q is pressed, then game over is true. Q is basically quit. Next, let's define the logic of the game. So if the direction is stop, then return. We have to exit, the rest of the function will not be executed. Next, I have defined the snake dot front, means the front coordinates of the snake are stored in a variable head, and that are also stored in a variable named new head. Now if the direction is left, then the x coordinate of this new head is subtracted by 1, that is x new head dot x minus minus, it is reduced by 1. Now if direction is right, then x coordinate of this new head will be increased by 1. Now if direction is up, then the new y coordinate of new head is decreased by 1. Now some of you might say that it is going up, so why to decrease the y coordinate? It should increase by default. So one more thing I would like to tell you, that the top left corner is the origin over here. That is usually used in most of the programs. So as you go up, the y coordinate is going to decrease, and as you go down, the y coordinate will increase. Next, I define the collision with the walls. If the x coordinate of new head is less than or equal to 0, that is it crosses or touches the left boundary, then new head or new head dot x is greater than equal to width minus 1. That is that new head x coordinate of this new head is greater than or equal to 19 as I define the width equal to 20. That is it when it touches the right boundary. New head dot y is less than equal to 0 means y coordinate was 0 at the top means it touches the top boundary, or new head dot y is greater than or equal to height minus 1, it refers to the bottom boundary. Then game over means whenever it collides with the wall or touches any wall, then game over is true and we return. Next is collision with self. For auto and S in snake, I have defined the meanings of these all earlier. F as the x coordinate of any element in the deck snake is equal to the x coordinate of new head, and the y coordinate of any element in snake is equal to y coordinate of head. Means the head collides with any part of the snake, then game over is true. Then we have to return. And next is the code to add a new head. That is snake dot push. At the front, we push a new head, means a new head is added to the snake, and to eat the food. X coordinate of new head. If x coordinate of new head is equal to x coordinate of food and y coordinate of new head is equal to y coordinate of food, then score is added by 10 and we place the food at a new position. So place food function is being called over here, and else the snake dot pop back. It is to move. That is the last member or say element of the snake is removed. That helps that gives the animation that the snake is moving. Okay, so next we will be defining the subfunction draw, and here we have to draw the boundary of the game, the snake and the food. So first of all we set the position of the cursor at the origin, and then first of all we will draw the top border of the game, and we are iterating the for loop for width number of times, and for int I equal to 0 I less than width I plus plus, we see out hash that prints the hash width number of times and it gives us the top boundary of the game. Next, for int y equal to 1, y less than height minus 1, y plus plus, we are iterating this loop for height minus 2 number of times, that is y goes from 1 to height minus 2. And we see out hash, and within this loop, we are defining another for loop. And this concept is known as the concept of nested loops when we use another loop within one loop. So what is the use we will see. Now for int x equal to 1, x less than width minus 1, x plus plus, we are now x goes from 1 to width minus 2. 1 is basically the first blank space to width minus 1. That is the last one row. That is the width minus 1 is the right boundary, and we are going till width minus 2, that we are defining the playing reason in this loop. So we are saying bool printed is equal to false, and if a coordinate matches the position of the food, that is x comma y is equal to food dot x and food dot y, sorry, then we have to see out at the rate, and printed is equal to true, that is this is the position of the food. Else for int I equal to 0, I less than snake dot size, I plus plus, here we are iterating over the snake. If we land on the any point on the snake, then if I equal to 0, that is we land on the head of the snake, then we see out capital O, that represents the head, and else we see out the small o, that is any body part of the snake. So it's just to distinguish between the head and the body parts of the snake. Next, printed is true, and we break the loop over here. If not printed means if there is nothing printed over there. If not printed, if there is nothing printed over there, then we see out blank space, that is our plain reason, and see out backhash n, that is next line, that the cursor moves to the next line. Next, we define the bottom border. For int I equal to 0, I less than width, I plus plus. Again, this loop iterates for width number of times and it prints hash over there. So this defines the bottom boundary and cout backslash n. Now we are we are giving the basic instructions for the game. Cout score, and one more thing I will like to mention, that anything that is mentioned in the double quotations, that is that will be printed as it is through the cout statement, and here score is written as it is without any quotations, so it will fetch the data that is stored in the variable score. And next we are printing the instructions that WAST are the arrow keys to move, R stands for restart, and Q stands for quit. Next, if game over, if then we have to see out game over plus R to restart or Q to quit. So next sub function is the run. Now we set the cursor visibility to false so that we don't see it flickering. Our and our game is stable while the game is not over. This exclamation mark stands for not, means when the game is not over, execute the following sub functions, and we are calling the functions one by one. We take the input from the user logic, that is taking as per the input what function is to be executed and what direction the snake should move and all that. And we draw the boundaries, the snake and the food. Then sleep 120, that is classic Nokia speed as written. So it defines the speed of the game and it basically gives pause after for a particular mini interval of time. Next, we are calling the draw function as defined before, and next we set the cursor visibility to true. Now comes the int main function. Here we are giving the basic instructions that we want to be printed at the starting of the game, that is Nokia snake game controls, that are the instructions, and press any key to start. Next we use get so that it fetches the data that which whether a key is pressed or which key is pressed, and system clear screen. This command is basically used to clear the screen. So next we are defining a variable, defining an object actually under the class snake game, and we are running it game.run. At last we write return 0. So that's all. That is how we make a snake game. Before we end the video, let me show you the output, how the snake game is going to run. So I am opening the Visual Studio. That is the IDE where I have written this code. So let me just run this code. Here you can see these instructions. Press any key to start. Okay, so this is my game boundary. It is initially at rest, as you can see. I can move it using the arrow keys or WASD. Oh, wait. So that's it. This is how the snake grows and eats food. Now, when I hit the boundary, it will show me that the game is over. Okay, so it shows game over, press R to restart and Q to quit. That's it for today. So thank you for watching. Bye bye.